My kids found my books on Pirate Bay, and that was the only time they've ever said, "You're like really something."
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Welcome to this week's show, brought to you as always by the fabulous Vellum, the best formatting solution in the entire world. And hey, you know what? We have a really cool guest on today, and we're going to pimp a little bit of him at the same time. But
you're going to double pimp?
I'm a double pimp. I'm not you.
You are a double pimper.
What can I say? You know,
that's going on the business cards.
Double pimper. Doug, the double pimper. That should be. We'll title the whole thing that. But
Karaoke King, double pimper.
That'd be a new shirt we wear for all these conferences. Everybody be like, oh, wow. No, but I was going to say, what I do with Vellum is you add these links in the back of the book. And the link I tend to add is if I have a bonus chapter or a bonus, something that I want to lead to a reader magnet, then I also use a BookFunnel link. And BookFunnel is kind of important because today our guest is Damon Courtney, who I think most people know as the BookFunnel guy, right? So,
the BookFunnel guy.
So he'll be a great chance to talk to, but it's wonderful how these go hand in hand. And Vellum, man, I see every day, I see somebody asking a question about how do I format my book and should I do it in Word? And I'm always like, just get Vellum. It's so much easier than everything else out there. So
heck yes.
But also, big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We so appreciate you guys so much. And if you guys have any or find any value out of listening to two of us yammer on, please jump over to patreon.com/the Two Authors Podcast and check us out. You know, you can follow us in the free tier, which doesn't get you anything, but you follow with the only $3.
Doesn't get you anything. It gets you the satisfaction of sending us some.
It's a little bit like looking out, like you're at the candy store and you're looking in the window. Like it's worth looking at sometimes because those sweets are always nice and pretty.
Some other little brat inside getting some sweets where you're not getting some.
You can just, for $3, you can be getting those sweets with everybody else. So it's well worth it. And it really helps us keep the show going and helps us do some new things as we kind of grow. So, but really cool. We got some great bonus questions in there all the time. And all it is,
tons of bonus content.
So jump on there. Welcome to the show, Damon. It's so great to have you here. We're such big fans of you anyway. So,
thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely, we're gonna rename this the Love Shack while you're on.
The Love Shack, yes.
Yeah, the Love Shack.
So while we think most of our listeners, because we rave about BookFunnel enough that you probably should be sponsoring us.
We're not. We don't already sponsor you guys.
No, we can talk about that. No, but we do love BookFunnel. It's one of the things that I think most of our listeners probably know about it. But there's maybe a handful out there who don't. So if you could kind of give us a quick TLDR on BookFunnel and maybe kind of tell me what kind of problems you first decided you wanted to solve when you first built it.
So the what BookFunnel does, and still at its core. So we just passed our 10th year in business. We opened.
Wow! Congratulations!
I know, right? It's crazy. October of 2015. So we're now, as we're recording this here in March of 2026. So I originally built it for really what it still does at its core. We do like so many other things, but at the core, everything that you do in BookFunnel basically comes down to I needed to be able to deliver an ebook to a reader outside of all of the traditional store systems, right? So if you're selling on Amazon, Amazon's going to take care of getting the book to the reader, whether it's their Kindle device or their Kindle app on their iPhone or whatever. If they read on a Kobo, then Kobo is going to take care of that. You put your stuff up on the Kobo store. I had a short story that I wanted to give to anybody. And I don't know what you have, and I don't really care what you have. Whatever you like to read on is fine with me. And so that is what I needed. When I was publishing my fantasy trilogy, I had a short story that actually ended up being a novella. That's the way
what
fantasy
we do. We just keep writing, don't we?
Yeah, 2,000-word short story turned into a 25,000-word novella. But anyway, the problem remained the same, which was I had this thing. I wanted to give it to readers. And at the time, nothing really existed that did that, right? You couldn't, even today, if you really wanted to give something away for free, you could probably put it up on, Kobo and Google and places, and you might be able to get Amazon to match the free price and drop it to zero. It was just such a hassle when really I have this thing, I have the EPUB, and I just want to get it to everybody. So at its core, that's what BookFunnel does. The way I sort of describe it is like we deliver ebooks and now audiobooks we've had for the last 4 years everywhere outside of those traditional store systems. So think if you were selling direct from your website, we do that for tons of authors. If you did a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding campaign and you needed to then like deliver the ebook or the audiobook that you promised everybody in that campaign, BookFunnel steps in to do that. If you just wanted to give away a free short story to your reader list, or if you had a reader magnet and you were trying to build you didn't have a list and you were trying to build one up, then BookFunnel handles all of that. And we do so many more things than that. But like, no matter how you get a book from a BookFunnel author, it's all going to like narrow down to ultimately helping you get that onto your device. And we are completely agnostic. I don't care what kind of device you're reading on. We actually have devices for just about everything that you can imagine. We have a Tolino, which is like, a store in Germany. We actually buy these different devices and we test all of them to make sure that our process is always going to work no matter what it is. That part's not like the interesting part, right? That's the part that BookFunnel was built for, but that doesn't really sell it because most people don't understand the need for that.
Let them try to do it without you, and then they'll be like, "Oh, yeah, no."
Well, that's the thing is like we're sort of a victim of our own success in that 10 years ago when we opened our doors, everybody instantly knew why we existed, right? Because if you had tried to give away something and then had to help all of these people get that book onto their Kindle, you immediately knew why I built BookFunnel. But now 10 years on, like nobody talks about that problem anymore because that problem has been solved by us. So then what you actually hear is people going, do I really need BookFunnel? And the universal answer is like, yeah, for
yes.
sure.
It's a resounding yes. I mean, because it's not even expensive. It's a great deal on it. And I think we've talked about that before. Like it's, I spend a whole lot more on stupider things that are really, really pointless.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And that's, it's a, we keep our prices low. We've always had our prices low because I want everybody to be able to use it. I genuinely care. I am a self-published author. Most of our admins, in fact, all of our author admins are actively self-publishing authors. We directly hire from the author community because we want people who not only understand the needs of our customers, but they believe in the mission, right? And I know a lot of companies like throw that out as just like crap, we believe in the mission, but like we genuinely do. Everybody at our company, we're readers, we read, we listen to audiobooks, we do all of this stuff. We, in the software industry, we call it dog food, eating your own dog food, but like we are all a part of this, and I am a lifelong reader. So I genuinely care about books and authors and all of these sort of things, which is great because every job that I worked before this, I worked in the aerospace industry for like 8 years. I don't care anything about aerospace. I mean, it's nice, great if you like flying planes, but
you care about it when you're flying in them.
I mean, yes, when I'm in the middle of flying it, but I get that.
But you don't want to know how. Yeah, you don't want to know how the donuts are made in it. So
yeah, exactly. Whereas in this, no, I love that. I get to work on code every single day that directly benefits me as a reader of these authors that I love.
So that was a question I was going to actually ask you, which you've half answered, is what was your background that led you into going, oh, I can code that?
So I've been writing code since I was 7, right? My dad brought home our first computer that we had to plug it into a TV, right? It didn't even have a disk drive. So I would write code. I would write stuff out of this huge floppy book that taught a language called BASIC. And I would like make this code, and then I'd like put a sticky on it, like "Do not turn this off," because if you turn like everything was just stuck.
Was it like those Texas Instruments?
Like no, it was the Tandy Radio Shack.
Oh, the Tandy. Okay, yeah, because I had.
Were you recording on a cassette tape?
Eventually, I did convince my parents to buy me a cassette tape so that I could record it. So yeah, for all the geeks in the audience, it was the TRS-80 or the Trash 80 is what we call it now. But like,
I had one.
Yeah, so many people did, right? It was a lot of people's first computers. And my dad was one of those people that like Radio Shack employee convinced him to buy it. And then he had no idea what to do with it. So it just sat in our living room. And I picked up the book that it came with, which was this big floppy book that would teach you how to program BASIC. And I just thought that was so neat. It was actually what drew me in 2011 when I published my first book. it's what drew me to self-publishing. And I tell people the same thing. Like, running BookFunnel is really different in scale, but no different than all the self-published authors that are out there right now. You're all entrepreneurs. You're all building something and you're putting something out into the world. And the first time that I was able, because I mean, like, when you're a kid, you can tinker around with stuff, but you don't have a lot of agency to make things, right? You know, you go out in your yard and you start like taking apart your clubhouse and like your parents get mad. But on a computer, like, I wasn't hurting anything. And the beauty is like, if you did something wrong, you could just fix the code and try it again, right? And so for my brain, the way that worked was beautiful. When I first discovered self-publishing, which was I read, my wife got me a Kindle for Christmas. And I went looking for books and I found a book that was like $3. And $3,
Yeah.
like, that's unheard of. I'd never been able to buy a book that cheap, right? So I picked it up. It was a fantastic book. And so I landed on an author who I still love today. I'm a super fan now. Read those books and then got to the author's note at the end. And it was like, oh, you know, basically talking about how he publishes them himself. And I went, holy crap, you can do that? You can just like put that out into the world. And that was something that I always loved about software, was if I had an idea, I could sit down, put my fingers on the keyboard, make a thing, and then just put it out there into the world. I didn't need anyone's permission. I didn't need anyone's approval. And if people liked it, they would be like, hey, this is really cool. I want to check this out. So I came to self-publishing with that same mindset of just, wow, this is awesome. I can make a thing and I can put it out into the world. And if I think it's good, then that's good enough for me. And let the readers decide. Because this was back in 2011 through 14 when I was publishing, there was the whole tsunami of crap and, you know, like the argument about like, oh, self-publishing is going to ruin. And it's like, I don't think so. No. I like looking at the world today, so many things exist because of self-publishing. We do a lot. I mean, BookFunnel handles every genre known to man, right? Primarily, like 50% of our customers are probably romance, because that's generally how all publishing shakes out. But like lit RPG, if you know what that is, so that is a genre that came out of self-publishing. So unlike all the others that were sort of like started at the traditional level and then self-publishers came in and really kind of we've taken over just about everything at this point. That I guess literary fiction is probably like the last stalwart of like traditional publishing. If you write that, you're really going to be better off trying to sell your manuscript into traditional publishing. You're probably not going to get a lot of traction in self-publishing. But if you're a genre writer, lit RPG was not something that traditional publishing would have ever come up with. That took a bunch of self-publishers going, you know what? I really like gaming and I really like fantasy.
Exactly.
I think I'll just put the gaming right into the book. But like that's beautiful, right?
It's really great. Yeah, it's kind of like it's playing Dungeons and Dragons, but you just do it by yourself. It's what it's that kind of thing. It's brilliant. So,
which if you play Dungeons and Dragons, which I do, and you're a grown person trying to get your group together to play, which happens about once every blue moon, that we're able to all like not have a recital or something to go to and we can actually get to play. Yeah, you can start to see why old dudes are like, oh, I guess I'll just read a book that has all the D&D in it.
That's true. Yeah. So like let's just a little more about BookFunnel. So one of the things that I liked it for when I first started and came across BookFunnel, which has been, I don't know, probably early on in your 10 years ago. But I guess the question is, one of the things we always advocate is using BookFunnel for building a mailing list. And so for authors that are starting out, what's the simplest way to use BookFunnel to kind of begin your mailing list at this point? So
I would say most of the authors signing up for BookFunnel, that's still the primary reason why they sign up, right? They're just getting started. They hear from somebody else. They're like, oh, you should go check out BookFunnel. And so they do, and they show up here. The simplest path is, it especially works in genre fiction, which tends to be like the bulk of our audience, right? We do have a lot of nonfiction authors as well, but it's everybody's needs are a little bit different. So I'm talking mostly to genre writers. You would write a reader magnet, right? So the book that you have, if you've written a book, you've got your first, especially your first book, and you're ready to go, do not give that book away for free. That's the thing that people will pay you for. And that is, ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to be selling books. And so that book is out there for sale. Maybe you're working on book 2, but a reader magnet is something smaller, a short story, a novella. You don't need to give away an entire novel. Really, you want it to kind of be short, because when a reader discovers new authors, especially today, there are so many books that they could be reading you're trying to show them that this is not even just like a sample, because that makes it sound like it's a sample of your book, and it's not. It needs to be a complete story, but it doesn't have to be a really long story, but it does want to show off your writing. What do you write, right? I write epic fantasy. So obviously a horror short story, not a great idea if I'm trying to get people into my series. If you can write a reader magnet that leads into your series, so much the better, because when they get to the end of that, they've already met some of your characters. In the case of fantasy, they've met they've been introduced to some of your world, maybe some of your dragons or your magic or whatever, and they're enticed and they want to go on and read the rest of that series. So a reader magnet is your first step. We've put out some great material that you can find on our website for free about what makes a great reader magnet. These are ebooks that we distribute through BookFunnel. So you can actually go experience BookFunnel via BookFunnel. And once you have the reader magnet, you join up with BookFunnel, and the first place you would start is what we call group promotions or group promos. And that, the beauty of those is you can really narrow down to the genre that you're writing. So if you are writing space opera, go find some space opera promos, because all the other authors that are participating in that promo, they all write space opera too. And even if you've got no list, right? So you've got zip. You have this reader magnet in hand. You've got maybe your first book is out there into the world. Your book baby's out there and you're ready to go. You show up and you have zero list. That's okay. Most of the promos on BookFunnel are very, very welcoming of new authors who are just coming in for the first time. So you join in with 29 other authors. And so now there's 30 space opera authors in this promo. They all have lists. You don't. So they're going to take your reader magnet and they're going to put it in front of their readers. Everybody's going to email their list, including you, even if it's a list of one. And you can build up a pretty decent sized list really shortly, because your primary goal right out of the gate is always, sadly, back in the day, we always thought that writing the book was the hard part. Now we've discovered that once you've written the book, no, the hard part is actually getting people to care.
Yeah.
And so getting people to take a look at your book, and that's what your reader magnet is doing. You're putting that shorter version out there in the world. Somebody picks it up. They don't have to dedicate a lot of time because it's 3,000 words, right? In 3,000 words, I can definitely tell you whether I like this author or I don't like this author. Enough to know whether I want to continue reading more by this author.
Most readers figure that out about me about 400 words in. They're like, no, this is too much.
What's funny is like, so I read fantasy, and there are, you really run the gamut from the authors who their prose is so high-minded and purple that it's difficult to read. I mean, like not quite Proust, but we're getting there. And then you have the ones who are like, it's way down here.
That
and
was
I will
actually a review on one of my books. It's not quite Proust, but we're getting there.
Not quite. It's not Proustian enough.
I had to look up who Proust was, by the way. So.
After reading the review, right? So like for me though, the writing has to be good. Bad writing is going to turn me off and I'm not going to want to read it. But I definitely don't want to read 8 pages of description of you describing, an elm tree. I want to get on with it. I would say I probably read what is more sort of like what they call sword and sorcery fantasy, right? So like wizard battles and lots of fight scenes and stuff like that. And so, yeah, if I pick up your book, I can tell pretty quickly whether this is the kind of author that I'm going to enjoy reading their stuff. And that's really what you want to telegraph with your reader magnet. If you like this, if you read these 3,000 words and you like this, you should go check out my books, because you're really going to like the stories that I'm spinning over.
Yeah, there's lots of options for that too. But pro tip, don't take this really neat sidebar from book 5 and use that as your reader magnet. They'll be wondering why the protagonist still has 3 arms when he only has 2 in the last book he read.
No, the reader magnet should if you're writing in series, especially, which of course like romance, you're not necessarily writing in series. You are a little bit, but you're writing with different characters. You want to take some other characters, maybe side characters from your world, and create a story. Because in that case, we understand in romance that each book is going to have different main characters, protagonists, and a different happily ever after. That is the expectation when you're reading romance. So then the short story in the reader magnet, you're really just sort of setting up, what kind of world am I in? Some people really love reading small town romance. If that's what you write, by God, that's what your reader magnet should telegraph. You shouldn't do a big city girl in your reader magnet if your books are all small town romance. You should be telling people what kind of writer you are and putting that best foot forward so that if they read that, they go, oh, this is really good. I think I'm going to like reading this author's books. And then hopefully jump on into book 1 and keep going.
So you touched on it earlier. 4 years ago, you said you moved into audiobooks. So
Which
I wasn't.
I thought that was like a year or two ago.
I know, wow. I did too. I'm like,
wow,
well, that wasn't
4
like
years.
18 months back. We started that 4 years. Okay, so I mean, in 2015, when you came out, and I wasn't in the industry in 2015, but it had to have been a mini revolution when BookFunnel showed up and went, here's a way of doing this. I was around for when you did it with audiobooks, and especially 2 years ago when we actually woke up and said, hey, look what he's doing.
Hey, BookFunnel does audiobooks.
Yeah, wow.
Look at that.
It truly was an answer to an unanswered question at the time, because there was no real way of delivering an audiobook outside of the main, right? So that must have been a big step. Really. Yeah. Talk about that step for you guys a little bit. That had to have been a lot of code. Talk about coding. It's a whole different ballgame, right?
It was a big step because it was almost a completely different set of infrastructure that had to be built. Up until that point, we're delivering, EPUB and Mobi files that clock in at a few megabytes. And now we're talking about, no. Now here's this audiobook that has 100 chapters and clocks in at almost a gigabyte of data. And so, a lot of the things applied the same. And we'd worked really, really hard behind the scenes to make sure that when we did launch audiobooks, everything existing that you could do with your ebooks on BookFunnel, you could now do with your audiobooks. So we have features like, we have a feature called print codes where you can print out individual single-use codes, put them on bookmarks, put them on postcards, hand them out to people, sell them to people, however you want to do. We wanted that to work. It doesn't matter whether it's an ebook or an audiobook or what it is. Everything that you could do on BookFunnel, you're delivering ARCs. Great. You can now do ARCs with your audiobooks. You're delivering Kickstarter rewards. Fantastic. Now you can deliver audiobooks as your Kickstarter rewards. Everything you could do with an ebook on BookFunnel, you could do with an audiobook. And that was really important to us because we'd already spent all this time building these great features. Audiobooks came about because, and it was a big investment for us. We brought in another engineer because we were building it in tandem while BookFunnel still had to kind of keep going and updating new features and fixing bugs and doing all that sort of stuff. But everything that we build at BookFunnel comes directly from our authors. The reason we go to conferences, the reason that we meet authors where they are, and that we're always talking with authors is we want to make sure that we are building what authors either need right now or what they're going to need. The Gretzky quote, right? He's always skating to where the puck is going to be. Audiobooks, we saw it years ago and we didn't have the bandwidth to build it. So we kept going, man, we really need to do it. And then it finally just sort of reached a point where, man, we're hearing from so many of our authors who are really getting into audiobooks. We need to move there. And then what was great was we did that and we had it out before sort of COVID hit. And so as COVID hit and more people were spending time at home, people started going, hey, I want to do more with my audiobooks. And suddenly, well, their BookFunnel was already there. We already had that feature for you. It was the same way that we built direct sales. I've told the story before, but like I built direct sales delivery almost under duress. Like I kept insisting that it's just it's a waste of time. Nobody wants to use it. Nobody's going to buy directly from your website. And so I finally built it and was just like, here, there's your direct sales. And then people went out and completely proved me wrong. And then when COVID hit and the world kind of turned upside down, thanks, Lin-Manuel Miranda. But pretty of you Hamilton fans. You
got to break in a song. I mean, that's.
I could. So I grew up in musical theater at the same time. So when that came about, and suddenly people were kind of shocked to their core and thought maybe I need to diversify some of my book sales a little bit. They came to BookFunnel and were like, oh, direct sales and audiobooks are already here because we had been building, even against my own better judgment. We were building what our authors needed. And so I tell people all the time when they come up and they meet us at conferences, we have notepads with us. When somebody comes up and they go, hey, I have this idea. They're like, dang, that is a good idea. Let's write that down. That doesn't mean that we're going to run home and build it, but we have. At Author Nation this last year in November, we announced ebook signing. So you can actually now sign individual copies of ebooks and send those to people. And when that reader, so if you're doing like a Kickstarter campaign, or if you're just meeting somebody at a in an in-person sales event, you pick your ebook and then pick a little tip sheet that you can tip in and you can sign it, or you can sign the top of the cover, or however you want to do it. And when that reader downloads their copy of the book, only their copy, that signature gets inserted in at the moment that the book gets downloaded. So it's the same exact book, right? You've put your book up on BookFunnel. You only put one copy of the book up there, but every person who downloads it is now getting an individualized copy. That came because that was our authors were going, hey, you know what would be really cool is if you could do this, because we can sign paperback books, obviously, but people would come up to our authors, they're sitting at their booth and they've got their paper copies, and either they would run out of paper copies. And so, like, which is great problem to have. So they'd sell out of books, but then people were walking by and they're like, oh, well, I guess there's nothing to buy. Or people like me would come up and go, that's great, but I don't really read paper. I only really read ebooks. And so now the author can go, hey, no problem. I can sign you a copy of the ebook. And then again, when they go to download just their copy, they get that signature inserted.
Which is an original signature.
Yeah, it's like the NFT almost. Yeah, like it's an individual thing. Yeah.
Well, so because you could have at any point in time, anybody could have just made an image, signed it, put that in, and everybody gets the same ebook, right? And yet, if you go to readers, that's not what they want.
They want the personalization. They want the connection. That's crazy. I didn't know y'all did that. And see, that's one more thing we were just talking about. Like, you guys do so much that I'm just either behind and not paying attention, which is very possible. Did you know about that, Nick? Because you pay attention way more than I do. So
slightly more, not very well. But I did actually know about that feature only because I heard some people talking about it and excited about it, who do a lot of in-person events and sell physical books, but they also do sell their ebooks on there. So, Damon, one thing I want to touch on that you touched on, but is a lifesaver for me is ARCs. So beta readers and ARCs. So before releasing, sending our books out for those beta readers to look at, 100% of that goes out through BookFunnel, and they can read them on any device because it's the same setup. We just produce it in wonderful Vellum, upload that file to BookFunnel, and then send the link out to the beta readers and ARCs. It's a outstanding system. That has to be a big part of the links to BookFunnel. Surely is that system.
Yeah. So certified mail is the feature that we built specifically for delivering ARCs. And it was the first feature that we built after launching in 2015. So we launched with the initial, which was basically just like a download page. And it really was, files and then instructions for Kindles and Kobos and Googles and like all these other sort of things, right? And then immediately requests started coming in for people going, well, how can I do this? I want to send out advanced reader copies, but I don't want to send everybody the same link. I want more protection. This is my brand new book. I don't want it to be, go out to just everybody in the world who can download it. So certified mail was the first feature that we added after launching BookFunnel as a commercial product. And what certified mail does is you give BookFunnel the email addresses. We email each person an individual link that's made just for them. So when they download their copy, they're the only ones who are going to get the copy of that book. Or they can load up their BookFunnel app and they can go read it in the app, or they can send it to their Kindle app or whatever. But it's actually going to track where that book went. And then we watermark the books so that nobody can stop piracy. Even Amazon can't stop it. And they're like one of the biggest companies in the world. But if that file got shared somewhere, which hopefully you trust your ARC team and you're not just like sending out your ARCs to just randos, then like we can find the watermark and trace it back to where, like who shared that sort of thing. And then we also added, years ago, what we call restricted delivery, where you can explicitly say, no, I want to deliver my ARC, but I only want them to read it in the BookFunnel app. Which not every author wants to do, but some authors are really protective, especially because it's their ARC and it's their brand new book and they don't want it. I mean, like the minute the book ends up on Amazon, it's going to be pirated, usually within minutes of being uploaded. Like it really is.
Quite honestly, my kids found my books on Pirate Bay, and that was the only time they've ever said, you're like really something.
That's how you know you're legit. When they care enough about you.
I was like, awesome. Did you download it? He goes, yeah. I was like, cool, whatever. I don't mind.
Like when they care enough about you to steal your stuff, that's how you know you made it, right?
Like, wow. Leave it to my kids to tell me that. Like they're good about humility. So.
Keeping you grounded.
And so like we added the restricted delivery for some people who said, okay, I don't want the book to be distributed everywhere. And so that's just, and like at BookFunnel, one of our prevailing philosophies is always that we give power to the authors. You decide how you want to distribute your books. They're your books. I'm not going to make those decisions for you. You decide how those books are going to go out into the world and whether you want people to be able to download it to their Kindle, or if no, I want them to only read it in the BookFunnel app so that it stays within our ecosystem and it doesn't get shared out, or it can't possibly be shared out with the rest of the world.
Yeah. So let's kind of shift a little bit to just kind of like the publishing industry as a whole. So you've got your thumb pretty much pressed on the pulse, I would think. So over the last decade, what kind of some of the major shifts have you seen in indie publishing? that have just kind of come and gone and kind of like you said, you were like, direct sales, that's not going to be nothing. But then, boom, boy, were you wrong, huh?
So the first one I would say is like genres, right? So we kind of talked about this with Lit RPG. Genres, like popularity ebbs and flows. And so I will tell you that, early on there was more of a gold rush mentality. So people would be like, oh, what's selling right now? Quick, let's go write that, right? Yes, exactly. And the thing is like, that's not the worst way to be. But I will tell you that really early on, back in the when it was Kindle boards and then it became K boards, back in those days, like you would see dudes come in and be like, oh, romance is stupid. Anybody could write romance. I could write romance. And then they'd go off and they'd write romance and they would bomb terribly because they can smell insincerity. Like it's like your book is not what romance readers were looking for. And so over the years, we've seen a little bit more of that. The right to market trend, it was really high for a while. And I'm not saying it doesn't work or that it didn't work for a long time. It did. But eventually, what you find is that, you're sort of writing in a genre that you don't actually care that much about, which makes your books insincere, right? The Great Pumpkin only shows up to the sincere pumpkin patch. And so it's like when I read fantasy, I am a lifelong reader of epic fantasy. And I can tell when you are not a fantasy writer trying to write fantasy because I just immediately go, no. And so, one of the trends, like the sort of, I talk about this in one of the talks that I give, and it's like these days, I wouldn't recommend. Now, if a genre becomes hot and you happen to love writing in that genre, chase it. If that's what you want to do, right? Like romantasy is really, really big right now. I don't think I could write the romance angle. And so for me, if I were writing, I'd still just be writing epic fantasy because that's what I love. But it also happens to be what I'm best at writing. Like I have consumed so much of it that those stories, the way the ebb and flow of the story is just part of my psyche now.
I think I could go with awkward romance,
Awkward romance. Got some experience?
Oh, yeah. Make it like, you hit on a girl and she just stares at you like, huh?
And he's talking about Ashley.
I was going to say, which is actually my wife. She's like, talking about this morning, I said something to her. And she was like, huh. I was like, that was supposed to be cute. She goes, was it though? And I was like, oh, I thought it was. So I'd have talked my pants off, but whatever.
So like genres are like a big thing, but I think even more than that is, like I said, right to market was a huge trend for many, many years. And it worked really well for a lot of people. And then other people found that it didn't work as well for them because their heart wasn't in it, right? You picked a genre that's really popular, but if your heart's not in it, then the book is just not going to be very good. And readers can smell that.
That's why we ended up with some romance zombie books back in the mid 2015.
Yeah, it's probably sprung some subgenres just because they ended up that way.
Which is probably where romantasy came. Somebody was like, I like fantasy, but I sure wish there was more sex involved. And then, nothing like
That's exactly where it came from, though. Like, so, fantasy as a genre was predominantly male. It doesn't mean that women weren't reading it, but it was definitely written as more of a male perspective. But there were female readers out there who said, you know what? I love swords and I like dragons. And that's just like, I also need some steamy sex. And there's just nothing going on here. I mean, when I wrote my books, the books that I wrote at the time that I wrote them, traditional publishing was doing nothing but what we call grimdark fantasy, which is like anti-heroes and everybody's a bad guy. And Game of Thrones, my wife and I started watching Game of Thrones, and like, I loved it. I really wanted to, I wanted to watch the series. I'd read through the books. And I think we were like 4 episodes in, and my wife leans over and goes, is there anyone that I can root for in this damn show? And I was like, I think back through the books and I'm like, no, not really.
Arya is about it. So
yeah. And so like when I started to write my books, it was a direct response to that, where traditional publishing had gone all in on grimdark. None of them were writing the books that I wanted to read anymore. I don't need my heroes to be all like white knight, always doing the right thing. But at the end of the day, at the end of the story, I need them to turn around and do the right thing and be the hero, right? That's what I want from a story. And so I wrote my books because I wasn't seeing them out there on bookshelves. Romantasy came about because women, and then of course they bring in other readers, but like nobody was writing the books they wanted to read. And so then the authors, the beauty of self-publishing is people went, you know what, screw it. I'll write those books. If no one else is going to write them, then by God, I'll write the books that I want to read. So that's been a big, big change. In the beginning, people were just looking for like, what are the genres that are selling hot? I think I'll go write that. I think you're seeing a lot more people now going, no, I really love this. And maybe vampires aren't hot anymore. The beauty is that what we see on BookFunnel, no genre ever dies. It may not be as hot as it once was, but there are still enough readers reading vampire books right now that authors can make a living. If you've never heard of Jane Austen fan fiction, JAF, there are authors out there that literally write Jane Austen fan fiction. That's their whole genre. And you can make a living writing that. There are enough readers out there who want to read that, who will absolutely buy every book that they put out because there just aren't that many authors that are writing in that genre. And so they follow every author that writes JAF and they will buy all of those books. So that's been a big trend shift. The shift towards direct sales, I think, has probably been the biggest shift. And a big part of that, I think, is because like COVID came along, not that COVID necessarily made people go, oh, I should be selling direct, but it scared enough authors to be, first of all, like readerships went way up, right? Everybody was stuck at home. And so like all of our money started going up, but then it started coming back down again as people started going back to work, and people realized, a lot more authors realized that maybe having all of my eggs in this one basket wasn't maybe the best long-term strategy. And so they started looking at, how could I sell books? How could I get books out into the world where I am not necessarily beholden to any one platform? And that really is selling direct. If you can get readers, and you won't get them all, because some readers, they love their Kindles, they love their Amazon. You know, the beauty of using BookFunnel delivery is like, sure, we'll get them to your Kindle.
You go anyway. Yeah. I load books on my Kindle all the time. And since y'all updated that, which has been probably several years ago, but I remember back when you had to like do the whole
backdoor the stuff in there.
Backdoor it on my Kindle, and now it's so easy. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
it's so
great. Brilliant. And your customer support is outstanding. That from the author point of view, oh my God. I mean, the fact that you just say, talk to them, they know.
The thing that I tell people the most is what you're really paying for. I mean, we have tons of features and we do lots of cool things, but at the end of the day, our support is incredible. Like we're currently hiring another reader support person because we're always improving our staff, and everybody that comes in, they train for months, right? It's not just like, here's a Kindle, go get a book on it and now go, right? We don't have, despite the trend in AI and everything that's going on right now, and not saying that we don't use it in other parts, but as long as I'm here, we answer every email from a real person, from a real human. And people don't expect that. So readers, when they do ask us for help, they're expecting some automated response, or they're expecting just to be sent some crappy response that just blows them off. And we don't do that. Everything about the way that we train our people is like, no, these are real people that you're talking to. Usually older readers. Let's be honest. Like we get a lot of more support as they age.
Hey, and older authors like Nicholas here. So.
What? I can't hear you. Speak up.
Which I will say, because I just had an issue that with BookFunnel. It was not BookFunnel. It was an issue that Doug did, but.
It was a Doug problem.
It was a Doug problem. Yeah, it was a Doug problem. But it was totally Jamie. One of our readers responded to me, and I was like, I don't know the problem, and Jamie from BookFunnel emailed me and go, hey, it looks like you didn't do this. And I was like, oh yeah, let me fix that. But like within an instance, like it was all, the whole thing took, I think, 15 minutes from the time the reader emailed me, including him emailing them. I was like, it was 15 minutes to half an hour to get it fixed. And I was like, wow, that's pretty impressive. So,
and we are there 365 days a year, even on Christmas. Like it's very important to me. I take, BookFunnel's responsibility in the industry very seriously. If an author decides that they're going to sell direct, right? Which is I will tell you, for those authors listening out there and you only have a couple of books, don't do it, right? You really need to have a back catalog. You really need to have enough content out there that you can pull this off. It's not hard to set up, but it is going to take some of your time to get it initially set up. But once it's set up, if you get a reader to come to your website and they buy an audiobook or an ebook directly from your website, and then they land in BookFunnel, and BookFunnel is going to help them get that, I want that to be as smooth a process as it possibly can be, given the constraints that we have. Like Amazon could absolutely make it easier for everybody. They're not going to, right? That's not their business model. Their business model is, no, you should be buying it over on Amazon.com. That's where you should buy it. And so they're not going to make it any easier than it already is. And we have done, I think, the best job that you can do of helping people through that. And so for me, if that reader has a bad experience, they may never buy directly from another author ever again. They may go running back to Amazon and never buy direct again. And I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. I want authors to have a sustainable career and to be able to make money. And Amazon has been, Amazon is owed a tremendous amount of credit for creating the industry that we're all in right now, right? Like I published on KDP because that was what you did. In 2011, when I published my first book, they really were almost the only platform around. You had a few others. And so like they do deserve a tremendous amount of credit, but at the same time, they're also in the business of making lots of money. And so they're like over time, they squeeze a little bit harder each time. And so for the authors that have built up a backlist and are trying to build a long-term sustainable career, this is why Kickstarters and crowdfunding and things like that have become really, really popular in the last couple of years, because I can go to Kickstarter, I can do a big crowdfunding campaign, and I can still go put the ebook in Kindle Unlimited once the crowdfunding campaign is over. So you can earn a big chunk, what used to be called an advance, right, in the traditional publishing industry. But I see authors out there now that they put out a new book and they make $10,000, $20,000 on their Kickstarter campaign. And then the book goes into KU, and then they still keep their existing process, but they're starting to train those readers that, hey, you're always going to be able to find my books on Amazon and the places where you love them. But if you're one of my big fans, you can also support me over here where I have my new books coming out.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, man, we have kept you. I mean, we've already been a while. And I don't
time raced.
I was going to say we don't even touch half the questions we had for you guys, but so we don't want to keep you too much longer. But so we thank you so much for popping in with us and hanging out for a little bit and chatting. So.
And thank you for everything you do at BookFunnel, and thank you folks there for us. It really is a brilliant resource for us indie authors. So we appreciate you, and you're just going to have to come back. That's how we'll ask you more questions.
I'm happy to come on.
Yeah, we'll have to. I'll hog tie you to keep you up with you this time. So.
Well, and next time we'll like make sure that we talk about other stuff, right? So we'll kind of move along. Like, okay, we already. Yeah, go watch the first episode. If you go listen to the first episode, if you want to catch up with us, we're gonna jump back in the middle here.
Part 2, yeah. So
brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Dave. We're gonna hold you to it. So thanks, Damon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Damon Courtney. That was amazing. He is such a great.
That time flies with Damon. When you talk to him in person, or when you in the show there, it just flew by. We'll have to get him back for sure.
I'd say if you're an author and you go to a conference ever and there's a BookFunnel table, go up and talk to Damon. He's just a great guy. He's just a wonderful guy, which is
does so great presentations too. Very entertaining presentations so with a lot of info.
In this industry are just amazing people, and he's one of those that everybody likes him. I don't think anybody ever says anything bad about him. And his company, like BookFunnel, is an amazing thing. I think you and I talk about it all the time, like a little bit like Vellum. It is a building block for what we do.
Absolutely. It's part of the foundations of your business.
At this point, it is so fundamental and makes my life so much easier. It's a no-brainer. I think it's just, and you can chime in too, but I think it's like, as he talked about, there's so many things. The world has changed. The publishing world has changed in the last 10 years. I mean, it's changed a lot since in the last 15 years since I published too. And BookFunnel is great. They adapt with it. They're looking ahead at what's to come. And we didn't even get to talk to them about all that stuff. So
yeah. We'll have them back on to talk about all of that. But no, absolutely. It's a great tool. It's one of those things you don't even think about. Once you've set up and used it a few times and you know what you're doing with it, it's just part of the function. I'm like, and it's so fast. When I've got my manuscript done and I'm ready to send it out to my beta readers to go through. Between Vellum and BookFunnel, literally 30 minutes later from me going, okay, it's done. It's in their inboxes.
It is, man. And like he said, it's one of those things that, we've been around long enough that we remember the times before, but really we're so used to it. It's a lot like suddenly not being able to text somebody like, oh, imagine how that was. We're so used to that kind of technology. BookFunnel is that way. It's important. It is vital for what you're doing, and it's got so many resources. And just the webinars, like he talked a little bit about them, but they do webinars at least once a month, something. So if you're trying to learn and you're just now starting off, it's the way to go. So
Yep, a lot of resources over there.
Well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you kind of check on our Patreon. Check us out at patreon.com/The Two Authors Podcast.
Throw us some love over there.
Yeah, we need all the love we can get. So
we need love.
We need love. One love. We could do some sing-alongs with that.
Love is all you need.
And $3.
And we'll stop doing these things if you sign up on Patreon.
Check it out. We have some fun stuff. There's actually a really great bonus question with Damon on there that you won't get unless you jump over there. So, and big thanks, of course, always to our friends at Vellum and the Brads for their continued support. Make sure you go check out tryvellum.com/two authors to find out more. And you'll find the Vellum link in our show notes, as well as links to BookFunnel and any of our fun stuff that we talk about in the show. And we'll be back next week with a new episode of the Two Authors Podcast.
Until next time, be cool to each other.
Fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors Podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favorite platform for new shows coming every week.